I'm torn. It's like really boring agenda. We've already done all this, so it should be pretty straightforward.
I hope so.
But closed session, that's like the wild card.
I know. That's gonna be the interesting first one.
What are we talking about?
All right, what can it be? What can it be? This is pretty dull stuff.
It's very, I have nothing on any of this.
We'll go ahead and get started. I call to order the meeting of the Manassas Park Governing Body for Tuesday, January 17th, 2023. First, we have approval of the agenda. I believe we have a closed session. City Attorney, would you please read the citation?
Yes, it's paragraphs 5 and 8 of subsection 2.2-3711A of the Code of Virginia.
Okay. Any other changes or additions or anything?
Jeanette?
Okay.
Mayor,
Do we-
Madam Mayor,
I beg your pardon?
can I add a new business item, Commissioner Revenue Staff Support?
Where would that be?
Could I be the first 9A?
9,
Yeah, the Commissioner Revenue is supposed to be here to help me brief that. So,
okay. So it would,
Add a new business item, Commissioner Revenue Staff Support.
You too.
Can I be the first 9A?
I'm sorry, Laszlo, could you please repeat the change?
Mayor, while he's doing that, I just want to correct, it's paragraphs 3 and 5, not 5 and 8.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Close call right there.
sorry about that. Agenda item 9A.
9A.
Yeah, Commissioner Revenue Staff Support.
The 9A becomes 9B?
Yes.
Everything moves down.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Making sure.
There's Commissioner.
Replacing 9A.
Yes.
You had me confused when you said 9A. I thought, what? Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be 9, addition to 9D. Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the amended?
Second.
Wait, I'm confused.
I'm sorry, what?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
I'm
Please,
confused. Mayor, it's 9A through 9E now, right?
Yes.
You had said 9D, I thought, which confused the city manager and me.
did I say D instead of E?
Yes, ma'am, I think you did.
Okay.
So
Shall
it's
we do
9A
that?
through E.
Shall we do that again?
It would be helpful,
Okay.
just to make
okay.
sure, you're
So,
clarifying.
Do we have to negate the previous vote, or we just vote again, or?
Yeah, technically, I guess you have to rescind the previous vote and then
Okay,
vote
do we have a
again.
motion to rescind the previous vote?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Okay, now, the change in the agenda is addition 9E, and Laszlo, would you state the purpose of that?
Yes, I would like to request to move all the new business items down one, and the new 9A be Commissioner Revenue Staff Support. So now we have 9A through 9E.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Please join us for a moment of silence, and Councilmember Carrera, would you lead us in the pledge?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Liberty and justice for all.
Is there anyone signed up to make public comment? I don't think there is, but we need to go through the formality. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone who is not signed up but who would still like to make public comment? Okay, I have a small comment to make. Before you this evening, you will see the 2022 annual report of the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority that was presented to the member localities at the recent meeting. Of special note is the large fold-out map at the front of the booklet, in the very front. This map demonstrates very well not only the modal balance of projects funded by the NVTA, but also the regional balance that is achieved, both being a requirement of the NVTA. There's also another report coming out, and it's not yet complete, but that report will be on the economic impacts to the region from the NVTA project expenditures of both the 70% regional funding and the 30% local funding. And that report is being finalized, and I'll send a link out to the report on the NVTA website when it's provided to us. Overall, the positive economic impact to the region is roughly $7.1 billion, and that's billion with a B. So let's move on to 4A. 4A is a public hearing. The topic of the public hearing is a newly drafted governing body rules and procedures incorporated into the city code. I declare the public hearing open.
Good evening. This is proposed to replace Article 2 of Chapter 2 of the City Code, which is a guideline for the governing body to use for its meetings. It also will be, no longer will we use Robert's Rules of Order unless there's some question that needs to be answered outside of these rules and it seems appropriate, but it's not required. I do want to make a couple of points. I've made a few changes which are shown as track changes on documents that I placed at your each of your spots. There's also a couple available for the public out here if they want to look at them. Most of the changes I made were for internal consistency. I also made a couple changes based upon state law. So for instance, the recording, we had said nobody can record a meeting or a conversation, but the FOIA actually says that these meetings can be recorded. So I had to make that clarification. And then there was a couple that since this was replacing Article 2, there were a couple of code sections in Article 2 that seemed prudent to retain with their language, and so I've included those. And then I've also received a couple of comments from council members and our governing body members. So those changes have been made. So, for instance, the very first page in the Article 2, that paragraph, just the information paragraph, it talks about the right to suspend or amend the rules of procedure, but I just changed it to 2/3 of the governing body because that's what it says later on. So there was an inconsistency there that needed to be corrected. Another example is 2-22 on page 2. There was some questions from the council, a council member, actually the vice mayor, about the way it was written, so I changed that writing. I also added, because we've had some problems in the past with City Hall not being designated with an address. We ran into a little bit of problems with some federal agencies recently with that. I put that in there, located at 100 Park Central Plaza, just to make sure that it's there. It's there at one other place too, but it's nice to have it there. And then I want to find another one was just for consistency purposes is further on down in 224. C, subsection C, I just put in there how the city clerk will notify folks. It's consistent with the other notifications, except that it's only if time permits will it be placed in a prominent place in the city clerk. So if you guys had a really emergency special meeting, then that wouldn't be necessary. And then scrolling down, let's see here, on Division 6, Section 2-44 quorum. The current rules said that if the governing body, if you guys are sitting here and 15 minutes in, you don't have a quorum, then it needs to just go ahead and be adjourned or moved, continued to a different date. I thought that was a good time to put in there because we didn't really have a time before, so conceivably we all sitting around for half hour, an hour, waiting until someone made that call. And then, now let me know if you don't like these, because these I thought were helpful. So if you don't want them, it's your document, so please let me know if you don't like it. And then lastly, I talked to you about on 2-55 about the FOIA requiring that people can record public meetings. So if someone's at home, they can push the record on the GoToMeeting. And then I think the last one is 2-63. I just pointed out that the presiding officer and the clerk needed to sign the minutes. So those were things that are already being done, but I thought it was prudent to put it in here. So Any questions on the changes or the document itself?
Okay. Thank you, Dean. We appreciate your crafting this. We know you had a lot of items that you were working on, so we appreciate you taking time to do this. I think this provides the flexibility and the ability to maintain an orderly meeting. I think it's very well constructed. Any comments or questions from the governing body? No?
Just to thank Dean for his hard work.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks.
Took a while to pull this together.
Comments or questions? Okay. Since there are no comments or questions from the governing body, is there anyone signed up to make public comment for this public hearing? Is there anyone who's not signed up who would like to make public comment? Seeing no one and hearing no one, do we have a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. This will be voted on later on in the meeting. Thank you. Okay, moving on to consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of approval of the minutes of January 10th, 2023, approval and authorization for city manager to sign the agreement with the Virginia Department of Health as presented pending final city attorney review, approval of the FY24 adjusted budget calendar, and authorization for city manager to negotiate and sign an agreement with Capital Building Services for commercial cleaning services at a cost not to exceed $43,792.68 annually, pending final review by city attorney. Do we have a motion?
Madam Mayor, before you vote,
Yes.
on the 7B, I don't know, it might be a clerical error. The amount requested is above the amount budgeted. Is that, and then it says budgeted, yes, so I wonder if that's,
Yeah, it's not fully, but so we had budget for it, but it was a slight shortfall. So the state is increasing it more than what we had forecasted. So we're going to be just over the budget for FY23.
no, that's it, sorry.
Okay.
Just wanted to
Okay.
be clear.
I don't think we got a motion or a second, did we?
I moved it. Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. I have a brief comment regarding the Health District annual funding payment. If members of the public are viewing the agenda packet online while you are also viewing the meeting, you will note that the annual amount has increased from about 43,000 plus change to about 62,000 plus change, almost 63,000. Now, this is one of a number of examples of how unfunded mandates function. An unfunded mandate is when the state or the federal government mandate that localities do something and then they do not provide the funds to implement the mandate, or they provide only a portion of what is actually needed. So now this, of course, is a very important agreement that we have regarding the health district, but I just wanted to take a moment to call this to the attention of the public as just one example of increasing expenditures for items over which the city has absolutely no control. Does anyone else have any comments on the consent agenda? Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to unfinished business. 8A is a waiver 22-05, live and work units, the public hearing having already been held on January 10th. Are there any staff comments? Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. For the record, I am Michelle Berry, the zoning administrator for the city. You should have before you a revised or updated application that for the waiver of 2205. Since the public hearing, I've worked with the applicant to streamline and get all the information and comments that were generated by the governing body into the waiver application. Specifically, it does say that the units will be in general conformance with the attachment that shows the interior layouts. Also, that there is a written commitment to the annual certification for the commercial component of the live-work units. And finally, we came up with a list of the prohibited uses identified in attachment B, Now, they are a bit streamlined. Some of the uses that were discussed were actually either already not permitted or prohibited, or they were conditional use permits. So we added that no conditional use permits would be permitted in the MUD district, as well as eliminating any of the other permitted, the ones that are prohibited. And we did modify repair shops, kind of identifying small appliance repair, as well as jewelry shops, clock shops, for minor repairs that would be a good use for a commercial live-work unit, not precluding all necessary repair, but certainly the bigger, more intense repair shops we don't want in there. And then to clarify, it does state at the bottom that if it does go back to commercial, they can do any of the permitted uses in the MUD. We do have the applicant here if you have any questions. Staff is recommending approval, and we appreciate the applicant working with us on the revised application, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. And welcome to the meeting again. Thank you. Any comments or questions from the governing body? Comments or questions from the governing body? Apparently not. Thank you.
I think Dean wants to.
I just want to point out that when she's talking about if any particular unit is no longer live-work and the residential component is gone, that little unit there, or that space will then be commercial and the waiver will no longer apply. I don't know if that was clear. If it was, I apologize, but just want to make that clear to you.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Since you've spoken regarding the clarification, the restaurants requiring either a commercial kitchen hood or grease trap will not be allowed, but if it becomes strictly commercial, if the residential part is no longer, then the restaurant will be able to go in there?
Yeah, I mean, it would be just as if, like right now it can, if it's feasible. I mean, for the reasons that Calvin put in his email, it's not very likely. But conceivably, if they were willing to put the ductwork in and fit it out properly, they could put a restaurant in one of the interior units. The ones that are more likely to be a restaurant would be the ones at the end of the, or at the outside of the building where they could vent it right out. But yeah, they can. And, Mickey and I have been working in the past on proposed revision, zoning text amendment for what uses would be permitted by right in the MUD district, because it seems a little bit antiquated now given the direction the downtown's going. And we've worked with the city manager as far as what he wants to do as well. But that's something that we'll be bringing to you in the future after a few of the other big ticket items are taken care of that are on Mickey's plate. So keep that in mind down the road if, I would assume you would want restaurants in the MUD district. So I don't think that's one we would remove, but some of the other ones you might want to remove.
But right now, we're prohibiting it. Is that what we're saying?
It's not permitted in the live-work units. It would be permitted if any one of those units was no longer had a residential component, was no longer subject to the waiver. They could put a restaurant in there if it met all the other requirements.
And that counts for delis and bakeries and that type of business? Or is it strictly?
Yeah, I mean, that's the zoning administrator has to make the final determination, but yes, I would imagine they would be permitted.
Okay,
They would have to apply for a permit,
follow-up?
though, correct?
give a follow-up.
Well, they have to do everything else, so they'd still have to get the health department approval. They'd have to make sure that they had all the equipment in place for Calvin to give them certification as well. So it's not like they can just go and put a restaurant in there without any oversight. It would be just like any other restaurant.
It's the capacity, it's the way they're going to be built out. Is it going to have that capacity? If they can build it out and they can get
Well,
approval?
so what they probably, I mean, I don't know how the size of these units, but they'd probably take a few of them together to make a restaurant if they were going to do that. But that's something that the owner works out with the individual tenants, and then as long as the space allows for them to do what they want to do per the building code, then yeah, they could do it. It's just not allowed for live work.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments, or do you have a follow-up?
I do not.
Oh, okay. Do you have a follow-up? Okay,
I have one general question.
yes, go ahead.
It might be for Dean. I know we were talking about the zoning. That's not defined right now in the zoning text.
Live-work units are not
Live-work
defined in the
unit.
zoning text, right?
So what, besides the lease, there's nothing that the city can do to regulate any zoning violations?
No, the waiver is a legislative act from you
Oh, I mean,
under
meant
the zoning.
Besides the waiver, not the lease, sorry. Besides the waiver, that would count as any enforcement from the city?
Well, a violation of any provision of the waiver counts as a zoning violation. It would be treated just like any other zoning violation. So if they, if they came in with a rezoning and then, and did something that wasn't permitted in that zoning district, that's the same.
Well, in the waiver, it doesn't say how many people can reside there.
No, it won't, because
That's what I'm
we
saying,
don't do
so-
that right now either. That's a building code issue, whether or not they can fit in there. Our zoning ordinance does say that you can have no more than 4 unrelated people living together constituting a family, but it also says that we can't put or courts have said we can't put restrictions on what a real family is if they're actually related. So all we can do is restrict what qualifies as a family for unrelated people. So it's an artificial definition of a family just for zoning purposes, but it's very hard to enforce because all they got to do is say they're related, and then what are we going to make them pull out a birth certificate? What if they're from another country and they don't have it?
Well, the other question would be, where would it say that the person operating the business has to also be the primary resident in the unit?
Well, you're talking to, you're concerned about maybe subleasing
Right,
out.
that's
So,
what
well,
I'm saying. So that would be a violation in both the lease, the waivers, and the zoning.
Well, in the waiver doesn't really
Well,
address
it's not
that.
even in the waiver. Correct.
Yeah, right. That would be something that the landlord would deal with directly with the tenant. I imagine that they would allow for, subleasing under certain conditions, but it's something we don't currently regulate now anyway. I'm not really sure how we would.
Yeah,
mean,
it's
I don't
not
know about you.
regulating. It just, this is a new concept, right?
It is.
My fear is that we don't have this terminology defined in any of our,
Right, and this is kind of a test case.
Yeah.
If this works, then we're probably going to want to do that. If it doesn't work and they still aren't getting anyone in there, then there's no point in wasting all that time and effort.
okay.
But I will say, just practically speaking, why would you rent a loft, a residential loft, if it was right above a bakery or something, if you're not going to be the one working in the bakery?
Well, I'm saying, like, say the owner opens a bakery, and then he has his manager sleep up in the loft.
Yeah, was that a problem? Would you have a problem with that?
The whole concept of the live-work scenario is that the owner of the business has.
Well, but the person working there would still be a live-work situation, because the worker would
Yeah.
still be living there.
Okay. All right, we could do a test pilot, see how it goes, but I'm just scared. Should have something in writing in the future.
Well-
If this is successful with the owners,
Well, you can always amend the zoning ordinance, the text in there as desired. This is something that's been kind of on the books or in the works for a while, and I know the applicant's kind of anxious to get this moving. They've tried to get commercial in there, and they can't do it. So if this would help us, we'd still get commercial tax revenue for whatever we got in there.
no further question.
Follow-up?
No.
Follow-up?
Oh, He's good.
Okay. Well, based on his question, are there any other questions?
Just more of a comment.
Okay.
Because last week when we were going over this, I asked about the amount of people that are allowed to be in there. And Mickey and Calvin went through the rules for it. So, because that was a concern, 20 people living in there, a family of 20 living in there, but that's not feasible.
And I would point out, that's why they have to annually certify as well, because the big concern was this would become a subterfuge for packing more people in there and just making them, for all intents and purposes, a residential dwelling unit. That's the purpose of having the annual certification, and they are also putting it in their leases as well.
Okay, follow-up? Okay, since there are no other questions or comments, we'll move to staff recommended motion is that the governing body approve waiver number 22-05 as presented Motion?
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nikki.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to 8B, Governing Body Rules of Procedure, the public hearing having already been held earlier this evening. Any other?
I have nothing to add.
Okay, any other last-minute comments or questions? Anything? Okay. Staff recommended motion is that the governing body approve and adopt an ordinance to codify new rules of procedure for the governing body as Article 2 of Section 2 of the City Code as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you.
One procedural note, Dean, when will these take effect?
Can you? speak
Right
into
now,
your-
they
When will
take
these
effect immediately.
Okay, great, that's what I'm.
So, yeah, if you, it should be on the very bottom there. If you look at that, the very last part of the page.
What was your question, Daryl? I couldn't-
When will they take effect? When will they, the procedures come in effect? He says that immediately, so.
Well, I'm
that's-
verifying that because it should be at the very end of the ordinance itself.
Upon its adoption.
It is, it's number 7
Upon
on
its
page
adoption,
160
yes. I see it.
So it's been adopted, it's now in effect.
Very good.
Okay.
So let's have no parliamentary questions yet, okay?
I was going to say 7:26, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
Okay. Okay, moving on to new business. New business would be 9A, Commissioner of the Revenue Staff Report. Welcome, Debbie.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the governing body, joined here by the Commissioner of Revenue. So we have one key employee in the Commissioner of Revenue's office who's going to be out. We're not sure how much longer, but they're going to go on family and medical leave emergency for the next few months likely. So Debbie's office is very short-staffed right now. She's had to cover customer service, which means all the back-end work is not being done right now. I'll let Debbie kind of go over what she's a little behind in. We can continue to pay the employee who's out, right? They're utilizing sick leave. So there's no kind of available funding right now to provide some extra coverage, but she really does need help right now in customer service support. So I am requesting that for emergency purposes, we tap into a city fund balance to cover the customer service position for the rest of the fiscal year to help Debbie catch up with this employee who's been out now for a few weeks, I believe. A few months now, and is going to be out for a few months. So everything's kind of fallen behind. We're hopeful that this employee does well. But I'll turn it over to Debbie and see what she can do. But the request I'll be asking for tonight is approximately $65,000 to cover the salary, benefits, and then also overtime hours. Her staff has been utilizing a lot of overtime to cover the last few months as well. So they've already reached the budget ceiling for that line item. So the $65,000 would include increasing overtime and salary and benefits for the full-time person. We'll be trying to do an internal recruitment from existing staff for someone to temporarily become an employee of the Commissioner of Revenue for this period, and then come back to the city after that, work become a city employee thereafter that.
So it's a permanent hire, not a part-time
No,
person.
it's a temporary full-time hire that would become an employee of the Commissioner of Revenue, and then at the end of the fiscal year would return to the city if it's an internal hire. If it's someone from outside, it's a temporary hire until June 30th, and then the position would go away.
Like a project base.
Yes, absolutely, just a project base. So I'll turn it over to Debbie to go over a little bit things that have kind of fallen behind.
Well, pretty much everything we're behind on. Sandra and I have just ended up stuffing envelopes for the 781 business license renewals that should have gone out about 10 days ago. That some of them went out on Friday, some today, that they're due back to us by February 1st. And then it's going to be left to Sandra and I to bill all of those before and get them out to the taxpayers so they can pay that bill by March 1st. So in the meantime, we have business personal property that needs to get out and tax relief applications that need to get out, people sending in their income taxes for us to process. And as we add more units to Manassas Park, there are more vehicles, of course, that adds to the workload, and there are more businesses also. So we're just increasing the workload, yearly. and it's just to a point where I can't cover what I should be doing because I'm waiting on the counter, people coming in to register vehicles or trying to get their bills corrected or whatever that they have that's going on at the time. So I'm asking for help so that I'm not back up here in June or July asking for an extension again on personal property and real estate.
We understand, we know that you do need help, and as I recall, the last time this was discussed by the governing body, there was a general consensus that you did need help and that we should provide some help for you.
Right, and I understand what Laszlo is saying about temporary, but I do need somebody full-time, permanently
Okay,
to help with the workload. It's just too much for the four of us to handle.
yeah, okay. Are there any questions or comments for Debbie? Yes, Councilmember Hampton.
So, Ms. Commissioner Revenue, you have an office of 4, but you only have 3 in the office right now?
Yes.
And the person's been out pretty much will be out 3/4 of the year?
It was, her surgeries were scheduled for after the personal property was due
Okay.
for November 7th.
Yeah, so
And-
November, so we're, still have a half of a year left in the fall, so you've been down for about 3/4 of a year, it sounds like.
Well, we've been lagging behind where,
No, I'm staff-wise,
Sta-
being
yes.
fully staffed.
yes,
Okay, thank you.
which puts me out at the front counter, and
Right.
my time is better spent doing the billing and the
Right.
corrections of bills.
Okay.
Right, understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Carrera, do you have a question?
Since this is term limited, is it possible to give her 2 term limited people to the end of the fiscal year? Or we give her a full-time and a part-time, possibly to the
So
end of the fiscal year?
1.5 FTEs?
Possibly, if that's, would
If
that,
that would be your all's discretion, I'd have to redo the numbers, but just off the top of my head, that would probably go from 65,000 to 85 or 90,000 as a total.
even if you bring the second part-time one even further down to assist with some of the stuffing, you're talking about the envelope stuffing, some of the more generic, easier tasks are just, clerical, and that the person can pick up quickly.
Well, how many hours are you talking about for the part-time?
I'd like you to identify something that's probably, at least on the part-time, more minimal in cost, and that can do some of it. That's probably not the same level as the full-time one.
Well, you would say a part-time instead of a full-time, or part-time and a
part-time
full-time?
person to
Yeah.
the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah, again, I think that would push up the total budget to around $85,000 versus 65.
Do you have that? Is that available?
Oh, no, we don't know. We'll, once, if you guys make the decision to move forward tonight, my first step will be to ask current city part-time employees to see would they want to do this temporarily on a full-time basis, work for the Commissioner of Revenue's office. They know the city as well, but there's no we haven't talked to any of our employees yet about this. But that would be the first step, and then we'd have to advertise, though, if no one's interested.
And that would assist you greatly, right, to get you, that would prevent any delay going into the summer if you had that
Yes.
assistance? Okay. Thank you.
Do you have a follow-up?
No, that's it.
Comments or questions? Councilmember Moore.
Yeah, thank you, Debbie, for the presentation. It seems to me that this stopgap measure of getting you to June is insufficient. I mean, if at June, this person goes away and you're back where you're at today at square one,
That's what I was saying.
I heard
that-
what you were saying quite clearly.
Yeah, okay.
So my position, what I would like the city manager to consider is that we do this position till June, but we put it in the budget process so that we fund that position full-time going forward forever. That we give it, the Commissioner of Revenue another full-time position, and that we refer that full-time position to the budget process for full funding going forward.
Yeah, and that's all your all's discretion. Just to note, I do have another position already in the budget model for Debbie, which is the tax auditor. We've talked about that. That was a position that used to be in the office in the 2000s to really ensure that all taxpayers are actually paying, especially businesses, exactly what they should be paying, right? Checking with the state tax records. I did this in Lovettsville, where we advertised we were going to be doing this, that we were actually going to be checking people's tax returns to see that what they claim as gross receipts is actually what they are paying and going back multiple years. So actually, full tax audits and revenues jumped by 25% in year one after implementing that. So
I
I
appreciate
think that position is important as well. So I wouldn't want to push that aside right now, but I think
So maybe we could
FY24
fund
budget.
both, but I do think
Yeah.
the Commissioner of Revenue should have her say. And if that's what she needs is a tax revenue person to look at the taxes, then let's do that. But if Debbie's saying she needs somebody else to do other skills, and she's, sinking, given her current staffing configuration, we need to address that first. And then if the other position needs to happen, then that's great too. I'm in favor of that as well.
I doubt she'd argue with you.
No, I'm not going to argue with it.
Don't argue with me, Debbie.
If you want to come up and volunteer sometime.
Yeah, maybe, lick some envelopes, I can do that. But
do
you
have
need a full-time
folding
position.
machine, So we got half the job
Yeah,
done.
yes, she absolutely does. Yeah. Comments or questions? Councilman? Yeah?
You covered my point.
So do you
Any
guys,
follow-up?
No, I just hope that we can refer to the budget and that we fund this position through June to make it a full-time position.
do you want me to put that in the budget model? Does everyone agree? Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. Any
And I
questions
can
or
stuff
comments?
envelopes if you need me to. Just call me.
I'd advise against that.
We have a folding.
I would, for governing bodies should not, I don't think you guys should be involved in
It's a
personal bills. I know, I'm just, yeah.
Like I said, we have a folding machine, so that helps greatly, but we do have 3,000 of them to stuff to get out for the business personal property, so it's not a small task,
Right.
That could be a problem.
Thank you.
especially with just the two of us.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you for coming, Debbie, we appreciate it. Yeah. Okay, moving on to 9B. 9B is pilot grant. I beg your pardon?
Well, are they creating the position? Yeah, you're going to have to vote on that tonight then if you're.
Oh, it's not consensus?
No. When you're talking about creating a position that has
Okay.
funding associated with it,
I
you need
see.
to actually vote.
Okay. Do you want to state the motion, Dean?
Why don't you state the motion?
Oh, actually, so we need to get consensus. Does everyone agree with Councilman Carrera's at 1.5 FTEs for this year or 1 FT? 1.
Make it full going forward as a June.
Okay.
One if it's going forward.
I mean, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, I'm saying this year, you're talking about FY.
The remainder of this fiscal year,
So that's up to June
30th.
30th. And you're proposing part-time to June 30th and then budget full-time after. Yeah.
Becomes a full-time
And
position.
then what's your proposal?
I'm proposing that we bring 1.5 in until June 30th, and then we, in the budget model, add the other one going forward, July 1st of FY '24. So we're just giving her 0.5 assistance as well for at least the next 6 months.
And when's the
Well,
property?
then
That's
I would
also giving her
defer
more
my
assistance
idea.
to it.
I mean, I agree with that, just so long as we have that permanent position that she
That-
goes from
then
4
that would be-
FTE to 5
Yeah, and that would be part of
FTE.
the FY '24 budget model that we would vote
Yeah.
on.
Yeah,
But it would be
that's
two
fine.
a temp at 1.5 temp to assist, because,
And the
Because-
.5 would be more of a junior position,
And the taxes go out in June too, I think.
yeah.
So we
Well-
would need,
So to be, I think they're both junior positions, but I can, because from my understanding from Debbie, she wants customer service support, so they both would be junior. But I see your point a little bit, lesser of experience. We'd
Yes.
want, I guess, for the full permanent position, someone who at least has done administrative work in the past.
Right.
Yeah.
so then I'll go with the 1.5 and then budget it,
Yeah.
the one for the FY '25.
I think it's a nice compromise with me, and Mr. Carrera, so let's do that.
let's not say
I
that.
agree.
Let's not say that.
I agree. I think we're in agreement?
Yes, we're in agreement.
Yes, we're in agreement.
Okay.
So the motion then would be to authorize the 1.5 FTE for the Commissioner of Revenue's office through the end of the fiscal year. And then the rest of it is whatever you want to do as part of the budget process. It was
Okay.
not necessarily part of
Okay.
this
Do we
motion.
have a motion?
So, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Dean. Okay, moving on to 9B. 9B is the pilot grant program for sewer lateral replacement.
Good evening, Mayor Rischel, Vice Mayor Mensing, members of council, citizens, staff, and guests. I'm Calvin Odell, the Director of Community Development. The first item of business I have before you tonight is to discuss a potential pilot program for residential private sewer lateral replacements. As you are well aware, all of our sewage in the city is treated by UOSA, the Upper Occoquan Sewage Authority. is carried out of the city in a combination of interceptors and force mains that take it down to the treatment facility at UOSA. As such, we have to have capacity and available capacity in the UOSA plant. Our current level of capacity with UOSA is 2.91 million gallons per day. Under normal conditions, the city only really contributes somewhere around 1.23 million gallons per day. However, when we have rainy conditions or extremely wet conditions, we've seen our capacity jump up, our 30-day average jump up to as high as 2.18 million gallons per day, and I believe that was the melt-off from Winter Storm Jonas combined with some additional rainfall that really knocked our numbers up there for a 30 straight day average. Our capacity trigger, if you would call it that, when we would be forced to purchase additional capacity would be as if we had a 30-day rolling average of 2.76 million gallons per day. That would be 95% of our current capacity. So we do have a bit of cushion, but as we continue to develop as a city and as we continue to see our infrastructure age, I&I, or inflow and infiltration, become the major enemy. That's why you see those numbers jump up so substantially during wet conditions. We're not actually using more or producing more sewage during those rainy times or when the snow is running off. That's just defects in our sewers that are allowing groundwater, rainwater, snow runoff, things like that into our effluent that then we're paying to treat. We can control defects in the city sewer through programs where we do break repair, point repairs, cure in place linings. We can grout the connections, injectably grout the connections between the laterals and the city mains. We can do manhole rehabilitation or replacement. We can put salad dishes, as they're called, little dishes inside of manholes that sit in low spots to try to keep water out. We can do a lot of things to fight I&I on our side. What we can't do is control much about the I&I on the privately owned side. And a lot of the original sewer laterals in the city are Orangeburg pipe, which was most people would consider an inferior material, prone to collapse, prone to leaks and cracks and things like that. We were asked when we first kicked off this Kent Drive reconstruction project if there was anything we could do while we're in there moving private laterals, while we're in there adjusting, moving water laterals to new water mains, moving private sewer laterals out of the way, replacing the publicly owned portion of those laterals. Is there anything we could do to encourage residents to replace their own laterals? So tonight I'm presenting a request to sort of enter into start a pilot program to offer a grant, if you will, for private residents to replace their laterals. Now, what we're proposing is $1,000 per resident towards the replacement of their lateral. Now, that's about a 10 to 20% discount on the price if you consider the average sewer lateral replacement is $5,000 to $10,000. Really is, it's a variable, depends on how deep the lateral is, how long the lateral is, what the grade conditions of the yard, how easy it is to access for the plumbing company. So you're going to see a wide variety of estimates, but we're putting the range hypothetically $5,000 to $10,000, which makes this a 10 to 20% discount. And what we think that will do is for people that would otherwise possibly point repair and leave a flawed lateral in place, or people that are constantly just cleaning their lateral, paying plumbers to come out and clean the lateral out, maybe this would be enough to push them over the edge and just go ahead and replace the entire lateral. Now, what that also does is not just help with the I&I situation by tightening up the lateral and the connection to the public lateral or the connection to the main, but it also prevents those blockage calls that we get on older sewer laterals. So you have to imagine that when someone's lateral is aging and partially collapsed or is full of roots and it's hanging up, we're always the first person they call. Everybody wants to see if the city can get them fixed for free before they have to call a plumber. And we're, of course, going to go out there and see what we can do. And so in that time, we're investing money into the situation. So that's additional cost savings over the I&I by having people replace their laterals. No more of those frequent nuisance calls to come figure out what's wrong with someone's home lateral. We can also provide a bit of protection. As you all know, common industry practice these days is directional boring, where you just sort of blindly bore underground, and whatever you hit in the process, you hit. Now, you're supposed to check all that out, pothole all that, and make sure you don't hit anything, but we know that that's not always what happens. Well, nowadays, by plumbing code, when you put in a plastic lateral, you have to put in a tracer wire. So that makes the lateral now easier to locate, less likely to be hit by a pneumatic missile, something like that. Which, if you pay attention in the news, a lot of these incidents where laterals have been struck by directional boring are also some of your gas incidents where gas was leaking back up the sewer lateral into the house. So there's a lot of things that happen when you replace your lateral. There's a lot of good positive benefits. I&I is one of those reasons, but I wouldn't sell this short. You know, we're encouraging people to do something that's good for their home. It's going to keep them from running into major sewage malfunctions. This is just a good thing in general. It's $1,000. We're proposing 30 of these a year. Now, the average right now of permitted sewer lateral replacements is about 6 to 7 a year. I'd love to think that this gets us to 30. But it's only like a 10 to 20% discount, so I'm not overly optimistic. I think 30 gives us good cushion. So we're not, you know, if we get a little bit of a line, we'll still have enough available to help everybody out. But we're proposing to do this pilot program for 3 years, which would bring the total contribution towards this cause from the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund to $90,000. And the request tonight is just that the governing body authorize the city manager to pursue language, policy and procedure for this grant program.
Okay. Thank you, Calvin. This is a great program. I think it strikes an excellent financial balance, too, between providing a $1,000 grant to help, but at the same time, it acknowledges personal responsibility on the part of the homeowner, so great program. Are there any comments or questions? Yes, Councilmember Moore.
Well, first of all, Calvin, this really excites me. I don't know if you remember, but a year and a half ago, or maybe 2 years ago, I suggested this very thing. And the fact that your department has followed through with it, to give it cash incentives for people to fix their upper lateral, to help close the I&I think will only benefit our city and our problems with our sewer system. The only concern that I have is that's not enough money. So I'm asking that we put into this system that I realize it's 3 years, but that you come back to us in a year to let us know how many people have taken advantage of it. Because I believe at that year, we're going to have to bump this up to 2,000 per household, and maybe we do 15. If we're only doing 6 now and we double it to 15, that's still a huge improvement. I just think 1,000 may not be a big enough carrot, but let's put it to the test and let's see. But it's mostly important that we get this done and that we give our residents an incentive to fix their upper lateral situation. So kudos and thank you for bringing this project forward.
That's fair enough. Give 1,000 a try, and if it's not
In
enough,
a year,
then-
let's look at the numbers.
yeah, fair, good suggestion. Councilmember Javed?
Would there be like a wait list established if you have multiple houses want to do it like this year, but you're only going to have 30 houses? I mean, say you have like 35 that want to apply for the
We
grant.
wish.
Yeah, we would have to come up with that, a way to handle that in the policy and in the procedures, the procedural guidelines. But I would love to believe we would get 30 permitted lateral
And-
replacements a year.
And this year, we're prioritizing the Upper Kent. So those 30 slots are for those homes. That's what we're going to prioritize first, since the contractor is going to be there already doing the work. So we're hoping more residents there will take advantage of the program.
Or it's by choice? Right?
It is by choice, but we want to kind of prioritize the Upper
Yeah,
Kent
makes
residents
sense.
first.
Okay.
Do you have a follow-up?
Oh, no.
Okay. Comments or questions?
I have
Councilmember Carrera?
Yeah, I have a question. I am supportive of this, but this isn't budgeted this year, correct?
No.
So I would support increasing the amount from 1,000, because you say you're only doing 6, and you got 30,000 budgeted for the first year. I would like to start in July 1st, so part of the budget process. I don't like doing these things in the middle of the year, specifically when we present a budget, and, some of the public sees it, it's transparent, and then they see something in the middle. I do support the program. I think we should just start on July 1st. I would like to see an increase, sorry about that. So, I would like to see an increase initially, because this is expensive, and I think if we could go to 2,000 starting, and then designate certain streets year by year going forward, I think it would be more benefit and more people would do it. So I do support it, I just would want to wait till July 1st, part of the budget.
So a couple issues. So we have a budget line item in the enterprise funds called RUM, repair, replace, upgrade, and maintain, which we tap into for these types of programs. But you're right, this specific program was not called out for in the current budget, but we have a fund for efforts such as these to deal with I&I and other things.
Right.
And then the reason for wanting to start right now is because of the Upper Kent project. We do want to make it available for those residents to try to incentivize them to take advantage of the construction and try to replace their sewer laterals. So that's the only reason why we're trying to get it in right now.
If we did start at July 1st, so we're talking about just 5 months away, just to be, because this would still take about a month or two to up and running. It would at least get us ready, I think. I don't know if everybody's in favor of that. I have an issue just trying to do something in the middle that's not publicly, done part of the budget process initially. But I think it's a great program. I think we should do it. It's a strong
It
incentive.
is a good program.
So,
I think Calvin probably needs all the lead time he can get. So I would be in favor of starting immediately, because the construction begins when the nice weather begins. Is that correct?
Yes, and we're also, right now, the contractor is actively working water and sewer laterals on Kent. So the benefit of doing this now would be anybody that's on Kent and we televise their line and it needs to be replaced or is a good candidate for replacement, this would be available to them now,
Yeah.
as opposed to, we'll be beyond that phase in July.
Yeah, I think it needs to start right away.
so they're doing it now? They're starting to work? Oh, okay.
Councilmember Hampton?
Yep. I got a couple of questions, and you may not have the answer. This might be for Dean. Are there qualifications for the grant? Because usually with the grant, there's some sort of baseline qualification, whether that's income, something, or is it just first come, first serve?
It doesn't have to be. It could be first come, first serve. We haven't developed the policy yet, so I guess it's really what the governing body wants to do.
Yeah, initially.
Year one is Upper Kent. And
First
then
thoughts on what
there's not more
would
than 30
typically not
but it's
qualify
no-
would be a
no
brand-new
income
PVC lateral, something that's been recently replaced and shows no sign of defect. But again, this is just a request for the governing body to ask Laszlo and staff to put together a policy and procedure, and in that, we can definitely spell out qualifications, or at least exemptions,
Right.
Something that wouldn't qualify.
Right, that's a
And
start, right?
if someone had a brand-new lateral, I don't know why they would want to dig up their yard to replace it with an identical lateral,
Yeah.
but wouldn't be a good candidate, no. If it's permitted replaced PVC, it's probably fine.
Okay.
If it's aging, and even I would say ABS plastic, there was a lot of, when ABS plastic was very popular, there was a lot of inappropriate connections where people were using PVC to ABS with a standard solvent cement, and that doesn't work. It holds it first and then falls apart. So there are a lot of reasons why can be, depending on the installation, an inferior material. So that would be my first guess, would be what would be the qualifications would be a visibly damaged, collapsing lateral, something that already has issues, or a known inferior material.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, and I think I read this, and I looked at it again, and I know, I thought that they go out and they hire the plumber, and then they come back, and once everything, it passes, then they get the $1,000, right? Okay.
Yeah, it would be a reimbursement.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. And the other question I had, are there grants out there that can offset these costs? No
We did
such
not
analog?
find any such grants. That was part of the lag as well, because Councilmember Moore is right. He did propose this a while back. We were looking for grants. We were also trying to get mobile meters that we were going to be able to attach and really try to measure the problem and bring back more robust data. We just weren't able to do that, so we just decided to we just looked at what are we doing on an average yearly basis right now for existing permits and see if we can't nudge that number up.
Great idea.
And my final thing is, I'm fine, I'd rather start with 1,000, and then we adjust after we do a test case.
You'd rather what?
Start with 1,000, and then look at the results of the test case, and then make a decision upon there.
Agreed, agreed. I think 1,000 is fair. Yeah. Do you have a follow-up? Yeah. Comments or questions? Okay. Comments or, yes, ma'am.
Excuse me. When you televise the laterals, are you informing the residents if they have a problem?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. This,
And
this,
you'll let them
the
know about this program?
the contractor is televising the laterals. And if we're looking at the results and if there's anything wrong with them, we're notifying the residents.
Okay. And will you also tell them about this program then?
Yes.
Or how will
We
you?
couldn't yet, but if
Right.
this passes, yes.
Okay, great. Thanks.
The city is going to be contacting the homeowner, not the contractor.
Correct,
Okay. Because, some homeowners might think it might be a sales gimmick
right.
from the contractor side. Okay. that's
Yeah,
good.
we'll still be encouraging them to get multiple quotes too. I would never, I never encourage anybody to do any work without getting multiple quotes. Because although it's our contractor and they were low bid on our job, that doesn't mean that they're gonna be low bid on that private lateral, so.
Okay. Comments or questions?
Yeah, I mean, if they're already up there doing work, then I think we should start this now then. I mean, it makes sense.
I would agree.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. The sooner the better. The 1,000 grant to start with, and then revisiting that's going to change the motion, right, Dean?
No, you guys can always, I mean, really, it doesn't have to, because you're approving
Okay.
it now with $1,000. Whether or not you decide to change it later is speculative at this
Okay,
point.
so the motion can stand as it is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Any final comments or questions? Okay, staff recommendation is that the governing body direct the city manager to develop and implement a 3-year pilot program for replacement of up to 30 privately owned sewer laterals per year by awarding $1,000 grants per house for their replacement at an annual cost not to exceed $30,000 for a total of $90,000.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you, Calvin. That was a lot of work, and it was great.
Just pull up the
Okay.
presentation slide, it should pop up.
Moving on to 9C, request to authorize design change order for Connor Drive extension.
Okay, so while Calvin's getting that slide up, just wanted to announce that we're ready to do the groundbreaking ceremony for Connor Drive. We're looking for either the 26th in the afternoon or the 27th in the morning or afternoon. So I wanted to kind of just do a poll here and see what your preference would be based on availability. We'll have, the shovels, the dirt, everything will segment a specific area on Connor Drive. We'll send you kind of the layout of what that will look like. So if you guys want to let us know right now, kind of what your preference would be. Yes.
26th of January.
Yes, of January. My apologies. Yeah, 26th of January in the afternoon or 27th in the morning or afternoon. And if you don't have an answer right now, if
Well,
you
it
can.
might be warmer in the afternoon,
Sure, yeah.
because this is going to be outdoors, right?
It is going to be
Okay.
outdoors, yeah.
Okay, either afternoon is fine with me.
Okay.
I'm available.
Okay.
What are your schedules look like?
The 27th in the afternoon works best for me.
27th afternoon, okay. Councilmember Carrera?
The 27th,
27th.
either or.
Either one,
Either
okay.
one, so.
Either one, but I prefer the 26th.
Okay, okay. You're-
Either one.
Either one?
Neither.
Oh,
I'm headed to California on the 26th. I'll
Oh.
be back to the 31st, so that's fine.
Okay, neither one then. Oh,
I'm going either one.
I'm sorry.
Either one is fine.
Okay. Well, then, if it's either one, why don't we do the 27th in the afternoon so that Councilmember Hampton can attend?
Yes.
Okay, 27th in the afternoon. then.
Okay.
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 Excellent.
And Daryl, we will miss you.
Yes. I will miss you guys as well.
We'll Photoshop you in.
Yeah, there you go. Like that. There you go.
Go ahead, Calvin, thank you.
Okay, the next item of business before you tonight is a discussion of a potential change order for the Connor Drive Extension Project. Now, I understood that there was a request for a funding breakdown. That's what this slide here is. This is really an FY '23 breakdown.
Oh, that's
looking-
wonderful. I requested that. I thought it would be better for the folks at home to understand what's going on.
And this, when I say it's an FY '23 breakdown, it's really like a picture of what this funding year will look like. In general, this project, the Appendix A, which is the funding agreement with VDOT, it has three real sources of funding on it. We have the revenue sharing agreement, which is a 50-50 match, where $910,000, 534 is coming from VDOT, 534 coming for the city for a little over $1.8 million. Then there's some urban money on it. Now, that's not 50-50. Urban money is 98% VDOT, 2% local. So that's really in our favor there. It's $177,857 coming from VDOT, and only $3,630 coming from the city. So that adds $181,487 to that. So between those two funding sources, revenue sharing and urban, there's a little over $2 million on the project. Now, as we got into this project and estimates started creeping up, we wanted to make sure that we were okay to move on with construction. So we went ahead and allocated $760,000 in additional VDOT or NVTA local funds towards the project. That gave us a little over a $2.7 million project pool to play with. Now, that's not to say we're going to spend that money, but it got us through with advertising the project, getting a contractor on board. The way that played out was September 13th, the governing body authorized a contract with A&M Concrete for the construction of the improvements in the amount of $1.546 million. And in that was a $77,000 contingency, brought the not-to-exceed amount up to $1,623,788.78. Now, as soon as A&M, our contractor, got into the weeds of this project, we had been warned during the pre-bid conference with all of the contractors that there was quite a substantial lead time on ductile iron pipe. What we didn't realize was that this 14-inch ductile iron pipe that UOSA has in the ground was a 70-plus week lead time. So you're looking at a year and a half just to get the pipe necessary to make this job. So we immediately started looking for ways to avoid conflicts with UOSA's existing utilities. For $4,500 change order, Bowman was able to simply reroute some of the existing stormwater down near Euclid to avoid conflict with UOSA. That was quite simple. $4,500, rearrange the puzzle a little bit, avoid UOSA, and move on. However, out there near Route 28 is where those 14-inch force mains exist. Those conflicts were not as easily avoidable. In order to avoid conflict with that, we have to switch from a 42-inch concrete culvert pipe to a box culvert, something completely different shape that will allow us to clear the UOSA existing lines without having to relocate them, drop them, move them, do anything. So it gets us away from any of that 14-inch ductile iron pipe order. Now, in that change order, it's not literally just switching one culvert to another. You also have to do a new topo survey, and you have to do the environmental permit modification and coordination. If you'll remember, there was a substantial amount of wetlands and everything involved in this process, and all of those permits now, this is the pipe that dumps out into those wetlands, so now we have to modify those permits with the Corps of Engineers, and we have to give Bowman the additional money to monitor and help us through that permit process. So altogether, this change order is $42,933.12. Now, that will avoid the 70-plus week lead time on the 14-inch ductile iron pipe. Will put the project almost back on schedule. And I don't want to say there are no guarantees here, but it looks like that it's actually going to be some savings to the city because the materials are substantially different. They don't have to order this 14-inch ductile, they don't have to wait for it, they don't have to pick it up and deliver it. The box culvert is not that much more expensive than the other, and it's easier to install. So it looks like there may be savings. Now, there's no commitment from the contractor on that, but there is potential there for savings. So I just want that to be known. This is not just throwing $42,000 away just to avoid a 70-week lead time. This might make actual solid fiscal sense. But that will bring the total remaining budget with the new change order to $1,965,540. And we currently have over $2 million available in the budget. So this change order is within the current approved budget. And the motions before you are, one, to approve and authorize the city manager to sign this change order. And then the second one is to authorize the city manager to approve future change orders that come within this budget. Because we are in the middle of the project, this change order will get us this design modification to avoid the UOSA relocations altogether, but there could be other things that come up that trigger additional change orders, and the city manager, we would like it if he could just authorize those change orders, keep the project moving, as long as they fall within the approved budget.
Okay, thank you, Calvin. Are there any comments or questions? Councilmember Hampton.
Where I don't mind the city manager signing, as long as it doesn't exceed the approved budget. The only thing I'd like to know is that we get an update of when there is a change. When you do have to you do have to sign a change order.
For each change order?
You can combine them, like maybe once a month or once a
Okay.
quarter.
Just email format?
That'd be fine.
Okay. All right.
No more.
Follow-up? Okay. Councilmember.
Just one quick question. How long is it, what is the entire project, the build time for it to be completed? Is it 18 months or a year?
Well, that was the big question with the ductile iron. When we were looking for 14-inch ductile iron, we were thinking this project might be a 2-year project. But in all honesty, I'm thinking if this project gets back on track, this redesign with the box culvert, as long as the lead time on the box culvert is reasonable, this project should be wrapping up in the fall.
Oh, okay. I just remember the mayor and I voted on this in 2015, and I think it came in front of a council like in the early 2000s too, and it just never got done.
Yeah, I filled out the initial revenue sharing application in 2008.
There were some speed bumps along the way.
Yeah, all the way like 2000, and then I think I heard that even in the 90s they tried to do this too, and it was.
Well, back in 2008, what was carried in the CIP, I think, was still $250,000 budget. So, yeah, it's changed a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Councilmember Amaya, do you have any questions, comments or questions?
No.
Councilmember Javed?
Hey, Calvin, I would assume we would already have a survey done before this change order. The change order is asking for another survey.
So because this box culvert both has wetlands on both sides of it, the topo survey is necessary.
So it wasn't done before.
Well, it was, but the road bed's actually raising a little bit. You're putting in a box culvert instead of a round 42-inch concrete culvert. So the topo layout, the topo will change at both the infall, the outfall of the culvert, and at the road bed.
Oh, because of the raise.
Right.
No question, no further questions, sir.
Okay. Councilmember Moore? No. Okay. Any last
One
comment?
quick
Yes,
question.
ma'am.
Topo layout, topographic? Okay, thank you. Just don't want to assume. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other comments or questions, there are two motions for this. The first one is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign the change order dated January 6th, 2023 with Bowman Consulting Group Limited in an amount not to exceed $42,933.12, subject to final review by city attorney.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. The second motion is that the governing body authorize the city manager to approve future change orders for the Connor Drive Extension project as long as the city does not exceed its approved budget.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you, Calvin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to 9D. That would be Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation Grant Submission and Resolution of Support.
All right.
And that's still Calvin.
Yes, ma'am. As you just said, the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation, or DPR, or DRPT, we are looking to apply for a grant under their Capital Assistance Program, or as we call it, the CAP program. The application period for the FY24 round of grants is December 1, 2022 through February 1, 2023. The VRE garage is an eligible project for this. There is typically a 50% match on these large projects, but that 50% match would already exist through the funding that we've already secured and allocated towards this garage. The total estimate on the garage right now is $33,058,780. The current funding to the garage is $28,483,000. That leaves a delta of $4.575 million. VRE has agreed to submit this CAP application on behalf of the city, but we do need a resolution of support from the governing body to accompany the application.
Thank you, Calvin. I'm very excited about this. I mean, this is a great opportunity, so we can only hope. Are there any comments or questions? Comment? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to comment, it says in the agenda that the IFB was not submitted, but according to Mr. Dalton, it was submitted last Thursday. So just to update for everyone.
And I had a question about the gap, the 4 point. So if we don't get this grant, are we in jeopardy of not getting the garage built? Because there was a gap of 4.5 million?
Yeah, so we would, I'd come back to you with a description of how we would fund it. If you wouldn't mind if I could talk to you offline about that?
No,
Okay, thank you. And then more to come. I'll just leave it at that.
but there are
Thanks.
plans to build. the
There are
garage.
plans. Yeah, so we have to move forward with this. So, thanks.
Okay. Follow-up?
No, that was it.
Okay, okay. Okay, I think we're ready for the motion. Staff recommended motion is that the governing body adopt a resolution in support of the DRPT Merit Capital Assistance Grant application as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to 9E, resolutions of support for RSTP and CMAQ grant applications. And Calvin is still up. We're
Yes.
working you to death tonight, Calvin.
All right, this is regarding applications for the FY29 Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Program, or the CMAQ program, and the Regional Surface Transportation Program, RSTP program. NVTA, through their RJAC committee, recommends up to $80 million in funding for these programs annually. The city could potentially receive somewhere around $500,000 to $800,000 through these applications, through these programs. The deadline for application is January 13th. That deadline was met, but the team worksheet and the resolution are due January 27th. So the resolutions of support that you have before you are a $500,000 application and for CMAQ funding for our active transportation plan, which is our trail connectivity program to try to interconnect trails existing in Manassas Park with and non-existing in Manassas Park with existing and proposed trails in Prince William, Manassas, and all of our regional partners. So that is the first resolution. Our priority resolution, though, is an RSTP resolution for $300,000 for scoping and engineering on the Mathis Avenue extension. Now, this is the extension of Mathis Avenue to Old Centerville Road. where everyone currently uses Scott Drive as the cut-through. It's more appropriate to extend Mathis Avenue out to OCR. So that is the staff's priority, but we are actually recommending approval of both resolutions for a total of $800,000 in program funding.
Thank you, Calvin. Comments or questions? No? Comment? Yes,
Yeah,
Councilmember
just some
Moore.
clarification, Calvin, and you may not be the one, but I think this is awesome. This 800,000, if we get this grant, it's fantastic. But we are, I mean, and I support the trails and the trails connectivity. I think it's very important that we do that. But I also get emails almost on a weekly basis about the conditions of our roads and streets in Manassas Park. That the roads are in horrific condition. And when you drive, you see the ruts and you see the alligator cracking and all the other things. Couldn't some of this money be used to pave more of the road? It can't. It's not funded for
Unfortunately
that?
not, no. That's, to qualify for CMAQ, you really have to have some sort of air quality impact. And resurfacing roads doesn't take vehicles
That's
off
too
the
bad.
road. It doesn't encourage people to buy more fuel-efficient vehicles. It doesn't, I guess you could say the opposite. If we make our roads better, less people want to take the VRE or public transportation. It kind of works against the CMAQ calls to make the roads nice and put more cars on the roads. And RSTP, again, it's not for reconditioning of existing assets. And we run up against that all across the board. Even revenue sharing, although they don't flat out say that resurfacing does not qualify, it's a tier 3 project to resurface an existing road. And they never get to tier 3.
No.
They get to tier 1, sometimes tier 2, but they never get to tier 3. So it's very, very difficult. VDOT considers that to be what the $753,000 in their maintenance funds is for. And that's their stance on it. There are not a lot of grant applications available for resurfacing. There is the state of good repair, and hopefully we will get that state of good repair for Manassas Drive. But that's our only real numbered state route that meets that program, so.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
If we get awarded the 800,000, that whole amount is going to go towards the trails?
No. 300,000
Yeah.
would go towards Mathis Avenue, Mathis Avenue extension, early scoping and engineering activities.
Extension of what?
Extension of Mathis Avenue to Old Centerville Road.
Oh.
Currently, it stops at Manassas Drive.
So it would be going towards the road project then?
Yes.
But that's an extension. So what you'll find is grants, most grants just deal with extending roads, creating new roads, essentially improving capacity of roads versus resurfacing. So this isn't a resurfacing project. It does improve traffic and mobility, but it doesn't deal with the issues that Councilmember Moore was talking about in terms of the quality of our existing roads. But it does talk about the quality of people's transportation experience when you improve traffic flow, and that's what this project would do.
Follow up? No? Okay. Okay. Doesn't appear to be any more comments or questions. Staff recommended motions. There are 2 of them. The first is that the governing body adopt a resolution in support of the Regional Surface Transportation Program grant application in the amount of $300,000 for performing engineering design of the Mathis Avenue Extension Project as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Second motion is that the governing body adopt a resolution in support of the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Program in the amount of $500,000 for implementing the city's active transportation plan as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank
you very
you.
much, Calvin.
you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to number 10, which is our second public comment time. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment? Seeing no one and hearing no one, we will move on to number 11, which is city manager report.
Good evening. So before I get to the priorities discussion, I do have a wonderful, oh, thank you. Michelle. Sorry about that. So before I get to this priorities presentation, I do have a great update to provide you all. One of the most important issues we hear from our residents every day is their traffic, right? And especially Route 28. That's been kind of ongoing as one of the top priorities when we're talking about the downtown. Concern is, well, how is this going to impact the traffic? And always the traffic that people deal with has to do with Route 28. So the governing body, city staff, Delegate Danica Rome, we've been fighting hard the last few years to get funding for enhancements of Route 28. Well, today we were successful, and the CTB, Virginia, the Commonwealth Transportation Board, approved almost $25 million, so exactly $24,473,000 for Phase 1 of the Route 28 Innovative Intersections Project, which is a huge win. So
And I can tell you that Delegate Rome is very excited. She's over the moon happy.
absolutely. And this is for the funding period of FY23 to FY28. So now that this is approved, they can start tapping into it for further design engineering. If you recall, we tried to apply for an earmark last year for design engineering, didn't work out. But all the applications that we've done, the Smart Scale, everything else, VDOT took that and went ahead and applied for this different funding source and got it approved. They called us today to let us know about that, especially want to thank Calvin and Steve, who did all the legwork for these applications that VDOT ended up utilizing to get this approved. Steve's been a great, and Calvin will agree, unbelievable addition to the staff. So thank you all for funding that a couple years ago. It's already borne more than enough fruit with, when we talk about the VRE project, the $2.5 million grant we've already won for that garage through Steve's efforts. And now Steve and Calvin have helped the city deal with or get funding to address the number one traffic issue that our residents face, which is Route 28. So we'll do a quick social media post this evening, just giving a little bit more information for our residents, and then we'll do a longer message on our website and a press release where including getting inputs from Delegate Rome as well to add to that, just to better inform our residents and the region what's happening with Route 28. So that's a huge win. Phase 1, as a reminder, is Manassas Drive to Spruce. So this isn't the end, but it is the start. This project had to start, and Phase 1 was the area that had the greatest traffic concerns and accident concerns as well. So addressing Phase 1 will definitely improve the traffic experience of our residents and improve the flow of traffic, especially with everything Fairfax County is doing on their side as well. So all that combined is going to make a huge impact for our residents. This is a wonderful day for us to celebrate this. Any questions on that? All right. Awesome. Okay, so what you have in front of you, I handed this out, or Kelly helped hand these out earlier today. It looks like this. Let me bring that up. So this was the priorities that you all set in calendar year 2021. So we had new members to the governing body at that time, and we wanted to look at the strategic priorities for the city. So we had set a 4-year roadmap. We've completed now 2 years of that roadmap. So I just kind of want to give you guys a progress report and also help you guys think about your upcoming priorities as well, right? What do we want to add for now, replacing 21 and 22 with 25 and 26, right? What are future priorities now that we want to start thinking about and adding to this? Do we want to replace any of these, change any orders of this? So I wanted to kind of go over this tonight, and during the budget, I'll give you a written report that covers each of these items, kind of what we've done with these items in terms of moving them towards improvement or completion. Some of these are kind of ongoing efforts, so we just wanted to kind of ramp up what we were doing to kind of increase service levels. Some of them have clear metrics for completion, so they're kind of varied. So my written report will go into more details, but tonight I just want to give you a general overview to help guide you all as you think about what priorities you want to put going forward. I did email you all the budget priorities from last year earlier today as well. So please let me know if you didn't get that. And then you have this, and I can email you this as well if you want a digital format of this presentation. So you can see here that what our priorities were. Number 1 was economic development still. Number 2 is really balanced slicing of the pie as our financial position improved. We wanted to make sure that we were covering all the different elements. Community maintenance issues, code enforcement, and parking really moved up as a top priority prior to that election that brought in a lot of the new members. Infrastructure, financial management, and service delivery enhancement. So the number 1 priority, I would have liked more progress on this one, but there's still a lot going on. I will say the biggest reason for the delay in this one, not just COVID-19, but also, if you all recall, the negotiations of the parking agreement with Park 170. That took a long time, but we finally got it, but that kind of set everything back. And then number two, the delays with Cinema Cafe agreeing, then backing out, then agreeing, and then backing out, not being able to build the building themselves. They're still, again, the lead for the lease now with Norton Scott, but a lot of that kind of set back the economic development initiatives. That's why you see some red and yellow. And again, in my report, I'll go over kind of the specifics of what's been done and what's still left to do. Balance slicing the pie, I think we've done a really good job. We've invested over $2 million in tax cuts over the last 2 years from the total 10-cent reduction that we've done. We really enhanced salaries with the big pay increases we did in FY23, and then we've grown FTEs to try to deal with those one-person divisions that we identified as well. So a lot of balanced spending across the departments, ensuring public safety was properly funded, schools, and of course still sticking with tax cuts as well as a priority. But we wanted to balance all that, and I think we've done a good job with that. Community maintenance issues. So while it's green, that's more of a service delivery enhancement, but we're still not there yet in terms of results. But we've increased our code enforcement citations by 400% over the last couple of years. We've actually finally started winning cases in court for the first time. So we won a couple cases this past year. So that's a huge victory, whereas before it was just zero all the time. So we brought a lot more cases to court, and we're starting to win those cases as well. Parking enforcement increased tenfold in terms of the number of parking tickets that we issued. And then zoning goes hand in hand with code enforcement. Some of those issues that we're bringing are code enforcement issues. Some of them are zoning violations as well. But a lot more still has to go forward in terms of final metrics for results. But right now, if you notice in the roadmap, a lot of the metrics are more focused on kind of inputs, right? What are we doing from a enforcement standpoint? And then we'll see what that does in the long run with improving the quality of our community. Infrastructure, we've done a lot with roads, and the announcement tonight just kind of proves that as well with Route 28. A lot has been done. Certainly a lot more has to do with quality, but we've doubled that budget in terms of the annual maintenance of our roads, but we were so far behind that it's going to take a long time to get that done. But we finally moved forward with Connor Drive and Upper Kent. Those are projects that, to Councilman Carrera's point, have taken a long time to get to the finish line. Bringing Steve on to help Calvin has really kind of helped us get across that line, that finish line. Funding safety risks, the culverts, those were the big ones. Remember, we had the culvert collapse, and we wanted to make sure that never happened again. So we really prioritized a lot of our ARPA funding for culverts, and we've already fixed the Manassas Drive one close to the tracks. We're in the process right now. They're doing work on the 2 Railroad Drive culverts, and then pretty soon we're going to start on the Manassas Drive, Railroad Drive intersection culvert as well. Those were the ones that were identified as high risk. We're tackling those right now. So that's great progress. The roofs, we did finish the high school roof, but we're still working on the police roof, but there are other facility enhancement things that we still have to get done. And trails, you can see we're very much in the planning phases. We did apply for a grant for the Signal Hill trails. We were unsuccessful with that, though, unfortunately. That's why that one is still a yellow. Financial management reserves are looking great. I briefed you guys that during the budget amendment and at the school board retreat as well. We're currently at 19% fund balance, which I did not ever imagine we would be there at this point. So we've gone beyond where we thought we could be. ERP enhancement, we're underway with that project. Has been briefed over the last few months. We've selected our tax system and our utility billing system. Next month, we're going to be bringing forward the implementation consultant who's going to help us with implementation of these systems. And then we'll be selecting the HR and financial modules as well. We've done a lot of other stuff, though, with software as well when it comes to the Development Services Department, Public Works Division as well. When it comes to their software, the new website, you can see that was one of the items listed on the roadmap. We got that up and running. The payment portal is up and running now. So we've done a lot with software, but now the big one, the ERP, which we knew was going to take a long time to properly vet and pick and to get implemented as well, on top of what we did to get Keystone to be more functional while we continue to operate there. Growing city revenues in addition to development, that one's a red. That was to try to come up with different ideas, but once we got ARPA funds, there was already too much money, to be honest with you, from an administrative standpoint to be able to manage. Doesn't mean we didn't apply. We've been applying for a lot of grants, so you can say grants was kind of our other strategy here. I just didn't have an official report to y'all. But I did bring Merchant McIntyre as a consultant that was going to help us secure additional funds beyond just economic development. So you can say that's a green, but I didn't develop an official report. We just went out and got a lot of grants for you all. And then service delivery enhancement, I think we've done a good job of building up FTEs over the last few years. And then this year, we finally established our customer service division. So that's very exciting. And then for the roadmap, I don't know how much detail you want me to go over tonight. If you want to wait, I can just provide you a written report summarizing that. But I do have kind of a scorecard for each of these, and I can go over each of these. It's all up to you all. Do you want me to go into detail, or do you guys kind of get the gist of what's happening here? You get the gist?
Yeah.
All right.
How about if we look it over and email
Sure,
you
absolutely.
questions?
And again, I'll provide you guys a written report
Sure.
that will kind of discuss each of these, kind of what I did, and then you guys can read through that during the budget time and let me know if you have any other additional
Sounds
questions,
great.
okay?
Sounds great, thank you.
Yeah.
So just help me, the check marks. Would you say green is some to little progress?
No. Green means that we've either accomplished our goal or we've enhanced the service delivery, right? So like, let me go back here.
Oh, that's what I meant, significant progress. So
Yeah,
green is
so
significant progress.
here, right, are all houses now in proper order? No. But if you look at the metrics we've established, we've increased enforcement 400%. We're above 97% in terms of compliance when we do issue citations. So the metrics that we've established are more inputs, right, and outputs, but not necessarily outcomes. We've done good in those. But that doesn't mean we've resolved
No.
the issues of code enforcement. Same thing with parking. Right, we've ramped up until the last few months when we lost our parking enforcement officer dramatically, tenfold the amount of tickets that we were providing. Does that mean people are not violating our parking laws? No. So, but we've done what we kind of have control over, if that makes sense, from what government can do. And I know your committee's doing a lot more towards this effort as well to kind of add on to what we're doing from a strictly enforcement basis as well. So hopefully that will help improve the outcomes in the long run. Where some of these are clear metrics, right? X% of this space is leased.
Right.
That has nothing to do with the amount of work that I'm putting, even though my workload is tremendous to try to get us there. That's a clear definition of an end result. If it's not leased, I get an F. It's going to be red. Yellow means we're getting some progress. So if you're looking at a lease, I've secured an LOI, right? I've identified businesses that could go in there. I just haven't closed the deal with the lease. Does that make sense from kind of the
Yes.
yellow, red, and green? Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I do, but
Yes,
not on
ma'am.
this. A few months ago, we approved the purchase of the social media monitoring and survey, and we asked that we get some reports through the metrics out of it. Could we see the metrics for fiscal 23 quarter? No, I'm thinking federal now, sorry. The last quarter.
Yeah, I would say the first quarter that you're going to get any metrics is going to be quarter 3, because we had the quarter 2, you guys approved towards the end of quarter 1. We got it implemented during quarter 2, so now we're really going to utilize it quarter 3. One of the things, though, we're going to utilize it for specifically is more outreach as well. So the 2 that you'll see is transportation, including Upper Kent, where we're going to continue the dialogue with those residents who are directly impacted, give them timeline updates. So Steve is going to build out that page, provide them information about the private sewer laterals as well. So more proactive communication. And then during budget season, we hope to use it this year as well to engage with our residents, survey them as well. So we hope to utilize it for those proactive measures as well, not just what are people saying about us.
Right, you do it both ways.
Yeah,
So we'll see something in Q4
hopefully, yes. That's
about
my goal.
Q3.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And I won't forget, because I'm like an
Yes.
elephant.
Comments or questions of Laszlo? Okay.
Okay, all right.
Do you have anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, super. Well, you had some really good news for us tonight, so that's great. Okay, we have a closed meeting. City Attorney, would you read us into closed session?
I recommend the governing body go into closed meeting to discuss and consider the acquisition of real property for a public purpose and dispose of city-owned real property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the city, and to discuss a prospective business where no previous announcement has been made of the business's interest in locating in the city, pursuant to paragraphs 3 and 5 respectively of subsection 2.2-3711A of the Code of Virginia.
Okay, motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. We'll go into closed session, take a 5-minute break first.